to episode 115 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who actually went somewhere for spring break, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, what's happening?
Well, we're recording on a Monday morning after our spring breaks. I guess this is technically still the last day of spring break.
We're still on spring break.
Classes start tomorrow. But
tomorrow night, right?
No, I think during the day.
Really?
Pretty sure.
Okay.
I hope so. 'Cause I think that's
you have an afternoon class tomorrow?
I have a morning and an afternoon class.
Oh, boy.
But, yeah, not much of a spring break for me. I spent most of mine grading from the previous term. So,
okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure I feel very rested, refreshed out of that. But you actually got to go somewhere.
Yeah. Myself and our chaplain, Brent, took 15 students to Atlanta, Georgia, and visited several other faiths while we were there. Worked with some refugee populations there in Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was a good trip.
Good. Yeah. The Atlanta, I think a lot of people, at least I didn't realize how diverse Atlanta is in terms of some of the different ethnic populations that live there.
Yeah, Clarkston, Georgia is becoming, which is just northeast of the city, is becoming a place where the American government is just depositing small pockets of refugees for the last decade.
Okay.
And there's something like a ton of different nationalities. What I kept hearing is that a square mile in Clarkston, Georgia, the most diverse square mile in America, over 60 different languages are spoken in that square mile.
Okay.
So yeah, we worked with those people, and that was great. We played with their children. Believe it or not, kids are the same no matter where they are. So they were a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can find us on Twitter at V&S Email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. We are on Facebook and on YouTube, Various and Sundry Podcast. And as always, we would appreciate a 5-star rating and a review. I was noticing, by the way, no new reviews, but we've got something like 60 on the Apple Podcast app, like 60 ratings.
I just heard from somebody that they rated us on Spotify.
Okay.
Which I didn't know was possible. But I'm not on Spotify. Are you?
Rarely.
Okay.
I have a Spotify account. I don't use it very much.
Okay.
So
I'd be interested to see what people are saying and writing on Spotify.
We'll have to check that out. But I noticed we have somebody gave us a 4-star rating instead of a 5. So we have like 60 5-star ratings, and someone gave us a 4.
I mean, it was bound to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Did they write a review with that?
They did not.
Okay. Cowards.
I agree.
Yeah, there it is. 1 4-star rating.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
That upsets me.
So let's talk about something that doesn't upset you. We're going to get baseball back.
I know. Baseball came to an agreement and a deal.
Now, I just know that they agreed, and they're going to start the season April 7th. And do all 162 in terms of the games. So they're going to figure out some way to jimmy rig the season to squeeze in those extra games.
Yeah, they're going to
It starts a week late, basically, right?
Yes. It was supposed to start like March 31st, but April 7th is close, and they're going to add in – every team is going to play like 6 doubleheaders or something along the way. Yeah. So that's how they're going to make up that time and finish roughly on time.
Okay. All right. I have no sense of who won in that negotiation. Do you feel like it was pretty evenly split where players got something, owners got something?
Yeah, that's the sense I get is players wanted a much higher threshold for the luxury tax. So in baseball, once you hit a certain spending limit, you got to pay a tax to the league.
Right.
And so there were 2 levels of that. Now there are 4 levels of that. And the very top one is being called the Steve Cohen tax, the owner of the Mets. So that tells you what they think of him. And however, the limit did go up. So I think the players are pretty pleased with that. Okay. The younger players are going to get more money now as well. So, and I think that was a big piece of what they wanted.
Yeah, I think I saw the new minimum salary now is $700,000.
Yeah,
Did I
that
see
sounds
number?
right. And I think it was in the 3s or 4s before.
Okay.
So it's doubled.
I'm glad to see they're going to be able to keep up with inflation.
Well, I'm glad the lights are going to stay on for those guys.
Yeah, it's those poor guys just struggling along at their
penthouses aren't cheap.
Piddly $375,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good.
It's good. Excited to have baseball back, and it feels like spring's almost here now.
Yeah, and starting April 7th, that's right around the time. I don't know when the NCAA tournament championship game is, but that'll be about the time that most people probably start turning towards baseball a little bit, paying attention.
Yeah.
Instead of having that overlap of like they start when the NCAA tournament's still going on. Baseball fans are going to watch anyway, but
Sure.
I think sometimes that can get lost in the excitement of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Speaking of which, the bracket is set.
Yeah.
It's out.
I haven't even looked at it yet.
I saw parts of the reveal show last night, I haven't done my bracket yet. I've registered that I'm going to do one, but I haven't completed my bracket yet. So I think we looked before we came on air. We got like 20 people already signed up.
20 people, and you don't have to know anything about sports to do it, but the link will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Fill out a bracket.
Absolutely.
Send it to a friend.
Yes. We had like 32 competing last year.
Something like that. Yeah.
We would love to see that increase. So I'm hopeful that we can get even more participants in that. And we're going to offer a prize.
Yep.
We did last year, but you won, so that didn't really
work out.
But if you win, and please, someone has to dethrone John Sloat from his championship here. We can't let him go back to back. We will contact you. We will get in touch with you, and we will see which of my books you'd like a signed copy of, and we'll get that out to you.
Yeah, but we just determined not the dissertation.
Yeah, probably not the dissertation.
By the way, did you see a couple of people name their bracket, give me the dissy or ask for dissertation? Did you see that?
No.
Yeah. I thought that was really funny.
I mean, trust me, people. Do you really want that?
Where else can you get a book that has 4 languages in it, 4 or 5?
English, Greek, Hebrew, French, German, 5.
5 languages.
Yeah.
Where else can you get that book,
From your local library.
Where else can you get a signed copy of a book like
that may be harder to come by.
From an author that knows 5 languages well enough to write in them.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
Matt Harmon writes in 5 languages.
Yeah. Fake news. So the tournament actually starts. Well, this episode will release on Tuesday, and that'll be the first day of the play-in games, the first 4, whatever they call them. And we don't want to give any spoilers away in terms of what we're going to pick in terms of our brackets, though neither of us have actually done our brackets.
Nope.
So we don't know yet. But I will go on record as saying I have absolutely zero confidence in my Ohio State Buckeyes to do anything in this tournament.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to pick against them.
Okay.
In the first round.
Which probably means they'll make a deep run. Right? What's their rank?
They're a 7th seed.
Okay.
And they play this is God's way of indicating that they're going to lose. You ready for this? I mean, they struggled down the stretch. They drew Loyola Chicago. Sister Jean. I mean, God is clearly on their side.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's that.
Okay.
So, they're a 7 seed. Loyola Chicago is a 10 seed. And I think a lot of people are going to pick Loyola Chicago in that game.
Okay.
So, anyway, it will be interesting to see. I've watched most of the basketball I've watched has been either Big 10, some Big 12. But outside of that, I haven't watched a lot of I haven't watched much Pac-12, so I don't really know much about anything about Arizona. They're a 1 seed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Gonzaga's a 1 seed. So
I feel like Gonzaga's perpetually a 1 or 2 seed.
Yeah. I think that's true.
And they just always seem to falter.
Yeah, they've not been able to seal the deal. a lot of people are picking them this year to do that.
Of course they are. They always do.
But we'll see. We'll see. Do you have a strategy for picking bracket games?
You know that little info button where it's like, what's the most popular pick? I look at those things. That's about as much research as I do.
I mean, obviously, there's the historic
5-12 upset.
5-12 upset, where every year at least one 12 seed's going to win.
Yep. I try not to root with my heart, which is easy because I'm not a huge college sports fan. But no real plan other than like, I got a good feeling about this team.
Yeah. Okay. I think it could be pretty wide open because I don't think there's a dominant team.
Yeah. When I get closer to the Final Four, I pick based on coaching usually versus the team itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is speaking of coaching, this is Coach K's last ride through the tournament. So Duke doesn't exactly come in on a strong note, so we'll see how far they get. But one other sports note.
Two others,
yes. Well, let's leave with the bad news then that's left.
Okay.
Breaking news last night, so Sunday night. The what are we even calling him? He's back.
Yeah. He who shall not be named has returned.
Yes. His retirement lasted all of 6 weeks? 2 months?
If that.
Yeah.
The baseball lockout lasted longer than his retirement.
I don't know if you saw some of this on social media, but people posting memes like, if you think you're a bad parent, Tom Brady spent 2 months at home with his wife and kids and decided to unretire. So, yeah. Not a fan, but anyway.
Tom Brady's back.
He's back.
Luckily, he's in the NFC, what is that, South?
Yes.
And I never see him other than the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
though we saw him in person.
We did. We saw him in person this year in Indianapolis.
The Colts game we went to.
Yeah. Did you see the guy that bought his last touchdown pass, the ball, for like $500,000? Mm-hmm. And now it's no longer his last touchdown pass?
I heard. I didn't know what he. I knew there was a guy that did that. I saw people joking about it on social media.
Yeah, it was like $548,000 or something like that. He got it for.
Oof.
That's a bad day.
Yeah.
Now it's just a football.
But hey, props to the guy who sold it.
Yeah, absolutely. When the market was hot.
He hit the market right at the right time there.
Absolutely.
So. Last sports note is our own Grace College Lancers.
That's right.
Advanced to the Sweet 16 in the NAIA National Tournament.
And they play Thursday?
They play this upcoming Thursday. That's right.
We'll try to tweet out a link to that game. I imagine there's a streaming service available for that.
Yeah, though that's probably behind a paywall.
You think so?
So, yeah. Thankfully, this past weekend was not because they do it in these pods. So, basically, they had 64 teams. They did 16 4-team pods all around the country. And so the winners of each pod advance into the Sweet 16. And so Grace played at Olivet Nazarene, which was a 2 seed. And their first game, they beat a team
Cumberland.
Yes, that they should have beaten more handily than they did. They had a large lead throughout the game and then nearly choked it away. Then against the team they played against Olivet Nazarene, they were down 12 at the half because two guys on Olivet Nazarene just lost their minds and went crazy. Like one guy had 26, one guy had 22 in the first half.
Wow.
48 of their 55 points from two guys. And then in the second half, water finds its level. The law of averages kind of kicks in. And Grace won in an exciting comeback fashion. They won by 3. I think it was 90 to 87. Mm-hmm. So peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
I can't picture them winning a national title, but it wouldn't surprise me if they made it to the Final Four.
I mean, you're in the Sweet 16. You got a shot.
Yeah.
You got to put together how many more games?
You got to win 4.
4 more games, and you got a good shot.
Yeah. The talent is there. I just don't know about experience, but
and they're young.
Matchups are always tricky. So
if it's not behind a paywall, we'll tweet out that link. How's that sound?
Yeah, that'd be good. So Speaking of things that are not behind a paywall, let's talk some Andy Stanley sermons.
Oh, my goodness.
A sermon, actually.
A sermon.
Yeah.
And why do we choose this sermon, Doc?
Well, it's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
So you were in Atlanta, and
was in
actually in this
Yeah.
church, you attended Andy Stanley's church as part of the Go Encounter trip you were on.
Do you want me to explain a little bit about the church and service?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do that.
So we've stayed in this area of Atlanta called Buckhead. And if you're not familiar with Atlanta, Buckhead is sort of like the ritzy area of town. And so we saw this church was 2 blocks from our hotel, and we just walked there on Sunday morning. I had at least Googled it and figured out that it was an Andy Stanley church. I'm like, oh, okay, we can go there. And so we walked in, and they immediately identified us as a large group and had somebody there to welcome us, escorted us up, walked with us the whole time, asked us what we were doing. A volunteer from that church was talking to us as a group until the service started. Incredibly welcoming. What's not so welcoming, they did not have any coffee in the building for guests. Big red flag.
That is the 10th mark of a healthy church.
Yes, in a basic human right in worship services. Anyway, so the music starts, and it is like, as you can imagine at an Andy Stanley church, it is like your whole body's shaking with the music, right? 3 songs, campus pastor gets up there and talks for a minute, and he's clearly stalling because their services are streamed. So he's stalling and trying to time it just right.
Okay.
And he does. A giant screen descends on the stage, and you can tell it's a screen, but it's supposed to simulate that he's there on stage.
Yeah.
Not convincing, but it's supposed to be like that. And so that's sort of the experience of it. And you want to know what? They came up to me in the middle of the service, handed me a big box. It was like, hey, instead of having your group rush the Welcome Center after, we brought all the gifts for your group here.
Okay.
And they just handed it to us.
Okay. So props to them for their
very welcoming.
Yeah.
They must have had staff members. All their job was to talk to people until the service started.
Yeah, that's
be
believable.
welcoming, kind, identify guests. They did a great job of that.
Okay. Nice.
And then the sermon started.
Do you know how many satellite campuses they have? Any sense?
That's a good question. I don't.
Okay. I was just curious.
I'm sure it's more than 2.
Yeah.
This one was huge. I mean, this one took up a city block, and the auditorium probably held 750, and it was a satellite.
Okay.
750.
How many services for that particular 2? Okay.
2, 9 and 11, and you were in and out in an hour.
Okay. Good old American efficiency.
Yeah, in and out in an hour.
Okay. All right. So you had texted me that you went to Andy Stanley's church.
Mm-hmm.
And then later that day, I saw someone tweet out a quote from the sermon.
It was Andy himself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I saw someone quote tweet Andy Stanley's tweet.
So you don't follow Andy?
I do not.
Okay. I didn't even know he was on Twitter, to tell you the truth.
And basically, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something along the lines of our faith does not rest in the inspiration and inerrancy of 66 books. Something along those lines.
Yeah. I don't think he used the word inspiration or inerrancy, right, in the tweet?
He might have used inerrant, I think. I think he's since taken it down.
Oh, really?
I think he took the tweet down.
Interesting.
Though it's basically just a quote of the kind of the summary on their website of the sermon.
Okay, I have it right here,
Okay.
actually. The Christian faith doesn't rise and fall on the accuracy of 66 ancient document. It rises and falls on the identity of a single individual, Jesus of Nazareth.
Okay.
Nazareth.
I saw he mentions inerrancy briefly, like in passing in the sermon. So
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So
Do you want to – so he's starting to set the stage maybe.
yeah.
He's starting a series in Luke.
Yep.
It appears that way.
Yep.
And basically saying that he begins the sermon by welcoming everybody and says, you may be questioning your faith, you may be doing all these things. The Gospel of Luke invites you to question the faith because Luke actually investigated this himself, and he's reporting back to Theophilus what he has discovered in the midst of his investigation, and he's sort of inviting his church along to investigate along the way. Is that a fair summary of how he begins?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what does he say, Matt? I mean, you're chomping at the bit here. Hold on, let me get my clock ready.
There's just so much you could go with here, but I want to hit some of the things he says and go from there. And I watched the sermon on YouTube, and it's got the subtitles and everything. So I'm like, I got direct quotes. These are not my paraphrases. These are direct quotes. Christians are not expected to believe what we believe based on a collection of ancient manuscripts written by men who never met each other over the course of hundreds of years in a time when everybody was superstitious and everybody believed in the gods and there was no modern science. That's direct quote number one. Then he talks about how the Christian faith is investigable, which, good, true,
yes, absolutely.
Agree with him 100%. And then this is the quote from the sermon that tweet is based on. The Christian faith does not rise or fall on the accuracy or the inerrancy of 66 ancient documents that we call books of the Bible. It rises and falls on the identity of a single individual, Jesus of Nazareth. That's a problem. That's a big problem.
Do you want to go into why?
I think it's better. Let me give let me get some other quotes in the summary, and then we'll kind of circle back to some.
Sorry, I ruined.
No, you're good. No, you're good. Let's see. We shouldn't ask, is there a God or is the Bible true, but is Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John a reliable account of events? Numerous times he uses the quote, the story of Jesus is not a Bible story. We'll come back to that. Luke is, and then as he's talking about Luke is not writing the Bible. Luke didn't have any idea there would ever be the Bible. Luke didn't know if his document would survive the first century. Luke had no idea if anyone would read it other than the person he's writing it for. He's not writing the Bible. The Gospel of Luke isn't part of the Bible. The Gospel of Luke is something that was included in the collection of documents that was eventually titled the Bible. Yeah. Continue on. We shouldn't take Luke seriously because it's in the Bible. We shouldn't take the Gospel of Luke seriously because it's in the Bible. He says that twice. Luke's account was written 300 years before the Bible was assembled. Luke's account of the life of Jesus didn't become reliable when it was placed in the collection of documents we call the Bible. Luke's account of the life of Jesus was included in the Bible because Luke's account was considered reliable when it was written. Element of truth in that. And then he goes on to make some other points. Luke cannot be mistaken. He's either telling the truth or lying. He makes a big deal of Luke basically wrote this gospel account for one guy so he could get it, never dreaming that it would be copied, distributed, etc. And so, yeah, I think that's probably good enough to give a flavor of some of the broad strokes.
Why are these things problems, Matt?
Well, there's any number of reasons. And I'm going to start by making a clarification here. This is entirely irresponsible on his part because he knows better. Mm-hmm. He is a seminary-trained pastor who has a master's of theology from Dallas Theological Seminary. Yeah. This is not some untrained, uneducated pastor who's just kind of doing his best to understand. This is someone who knows better. Mm-hmm. And this is what is so disappointing about this kind of approach to Scripture, is that he drives this wedge between Jesus and the Bible. And that's probably the most fundamental problem with this whole message, is he's trying to draw this, understood the most charitably, He's trying to clear away obstacles for people to encounter the real Jesus. People who might say, well, I can't believe that God created the world in 6 days. I can't believe in a God who orders the genocide of populations in the promised land. I can't. So all these sort of objections about the Bible, I think what he's trying to do is say, okay, let's ignore that. Let's just get you an encounter with Jesus, and then we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Which on one level I understand, because the central defining issue is, in fact, who is Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem. How do we know who Jesus is?
Mm-hmm.
It's the Bible. That's it. That's the list. That's how we know who Jesus is. And if you drive this wedge between Jesus and the Bible, then yes, you might in one sense gain an audience, but then what you're inviting people to do is to essentially create a Jesus of their own making if they're free to dismiss what the Bible says about Jesus. And that's deeply problematic. That's kind of the fundamental issue with that. He's also, and this is not just something that me as a professor, I think, is put off by. He's failing to make necessary distinctions. He keeps saying the Bible didn't exist until, the 4th century, and basically saying the Bible doesn't exist until the church collected all of the documents together and put their authoritative stamp on. These are the ones. That's when the Bible came to exist. Well, that's just entirely misleading, because Jesus believed in the Bible, in other words, the Scriptures, the Old Testament. The Old Testament existed way before the 4th century A.D. And I would add, the writings of the early Christians were recognized as authoritative. Paul's letters were recognized as authoritative right from the start. These gospel accounts, when they were written by either an apostle or someone associated with them, were acknowledged and recognized as authoritative well before the 4th century. You have evidence of this.
And just to outline some of the evidence, Peter refers to Paul's writings. Is that
at the end of 2 Peter?
At the end of 2 Peter, refers to Paul's writing as Scripture.
Yes.
There seems to be other evidences as well that, by the sheer fact that we have them, right, that these were copied and sent along to different churches.
Well, let me throw one more in there.
Yeah.
In 1 Timothy, Paul, talking about paying, having monetary compensation for elders who teach, he quotes a passage from Deuteronomy. He says, "For Scripture says, you should not muzzle the ox while he's threshing." That's a passage from Deuteronomy.
Sure.
"And the worker is worthy of his wages." That's a quote from Luke's gospel. And this is Paul quoting Luke's gospel as Scripture that early.
Yeah.
And so it gives this impression that there were no really authoritative documents about the life of Jesus. No books of what we call the Bible that either existed or were considered authoritative until Constantine comes along in the 4th century and goes, all right, guys, you guys figure out which ones are authoritative, and then we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just – he knows better.
So what's the danger? What's the trap of this kind of thinking? Like, what does this lead to us does this lead us to re-question what books should be considered authoritative? Like, does it cause us to go like, well, when Paul says that, we don't really need to listen to that? Like what's the danger?
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, in addition to what I said earlier about you can't know Jesus apart from the Bible, it fundamentally undermines our trust in God's Word. And it invites us to pick and choose what we like and what we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like the Gospels. I really like what this says about Jesus. But man, that Paul, he was a misogynistic pig. Let's kind of cut that out and get rid of that. Or the Old Testament. Gosh, brutal God back there. Let's just kind of get rid of that. And honestly, it's consistent with I forget the name of the book that Andy Stanley wrote on this, but he wrote a book about the Old Testament on basically how Christians should unhitch themselves from the Old Testament. And so it's consistent with given the most favorable reading of what he's saying, he's trying to say, look, don't get hung up on all of the apologetic issues connected with defending the Bible. Talk about Jesus. Okay, there's a part of me that says there's an element of truth in that. That if I'm sharing the gospel with people, I want to get them focused on who is Jesus. Mm-hmm. But what I don't want to do in the meantime is undermine their trust in the Bible. Because even if I get them to see Jesus, then what I've done is created a sort of pick and choose option for them to say, well, you can kind of pick and choose what you want out of the Bible. And you're under no obligation to accept it as God's word, to hear it as God's word, to surrender to it, to submit to it, to obey it.
The name of the book is Irresistible.
There you go.
The name of his book, where he not questions the authority of the Old Testament, but wants to kind of let it fade into the background and get rid of it, is the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Or Irresistible is the name of that book.
Yes.
I think this is one natural conclusion to even that sort of ministry philosophy that he has, just sort of this whatever works, this sort of pragmatism that's come. And Andy Stanley was, I think, a fairly early adopter in that movement. But when your organizing principle is whatever works, you lose some of the ideologies and some of the principles that we've had handed down to us from history, like inerrancy, like the infallibility of Scripture, those sorts of things. In order to, the Old Testament isn't really working for us, so let's get rid of it because our real organizing principle is pragmatism. And I think that's where I see this all coming from.
Well, and it seems a little ironic to me that you want to point people to Jesus, and yet you want to reject Jesus' view of Scripture. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at what Jesus does, and I'm sure the argument comes back, well, he was interacting with the Jewish crowd and such. Okay, sure, yeah, but that doesn't mean that he just would jettison the Scriptures. Mm-hmm. And even the early Christians, even as they're moving out into non-Jewish areas, they are still pointing people back to what we call the Old Testament and saying, look, Jesus is the fulfillment of this. God made these promises. Jesus is the fulfillment of this. So I think that, even the Gospel of Luke, which he's about to preach through, it is shot through with Old Testament allusions, echoes, quotations, themes, structures that – can you understand it without those? Yeah, I think you can. You can understand the Gospel of Luke at a basic level. But Luke didn't include those just for I'm going to throw a bone to the really intellectual people who really want to dig in.
Yeah.
He's doing it because it's part of a view of world history that God is fulfilling promises and that Jesus is the answer to what Adam broke. And that's a fundamental human problem, not just a Jewish problem. So I get weary with these attempts, even if I give the most well-meaning spin. Let me give another example where I think he plays fast and loose with he knows better. He makes a big deal about – so Luke's gospel is introduced as being written for Theophilus. And you read any decent commentary on Luke, and it becomes very clear that the vast majority of commentators think that Theophilus was a real person who helped fund the production of this gospel account.
Like paid for Luke's
travel,
Luke's
time,
food.
travel, research, etc. And with the intention of distributing it, of making copies of it, of publishing it. That's what a literary patron would do. And yet Andy Stanley makes it seem like, Luke's writing this gospel for one guy, and Luke had no idea that it would be spread throughout the Mediterranean world.
And that gets to something that I struggle with, and history is a tricky subject. To know the mind and intention of a person in history is next to impossible unless they have a book telling you what unless they have some writings. Like we know what Julius Caesar's thinking because Julius Caesar wrote a lot about what he was thinking and doing and processing and going through. We don't have that with Luke. And so I think it's an overstep to say this is what Luke was thinking, this is what Luke was doing.
Well, I mean, he does give his opening statement of this is what he did to produce this gospel account.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just –
But for Andy to go, he's only doing it for one person. He never intended this to be distributed, I think is an overstep.
Yes, and not only an overstep, but one that he knows is out of line with scholarship on the Gospel of Luke, and not just from an evangelical perspective. Like this is this is the predominant view that Luke they intended to distribute this gospel, not just, one guy wanted it, so he got it, and lo and behold, miraculously, it just started getting passed around. It doesn't miraculously just start mysteriously getting passed around. Luke's a long book.
Yeah.
It's not something that you knock out in an afternoon of copying and be like, it's not like Philemon where you're like, okay, I can make a copy of that. And
I get 2 or 3 done today.
Yeah. And pass these around. And I just want to come back to he knows better because he's been seminary trained. He knows better. So he's playing fast and loose with the evidence. He's playing fast and loose in an effort, and again, this is where I say he is well-intentioned. He wants people to encounter Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do it in the wrong way, you might clear out obstacles to getting people to see Jesus, but you've only created obstacles on the other side of them encountering the Jesus you present that are just going to be as problematic, if not more, on the backside of it. So
we could go on for a couple hours about this.
We could. I was pretty worked up yesterday. I was listening to this. So
yeah, you were pretty fired up. You were texting me about it.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was hot take enough for my son Jake, who was like, I need to see this version of you on the podcast tomorrow. It wasn't quite. This is a little bit more restrained, but it's there. It's
okay.
There. So
we'll post the link to the sermon.
Yeah.
Just decide for yourself. Listen along. It's crafted in about 35 minutes, so easily digestible. No commercial breaks.
Indeed.
You should be able to get it in a regularly programmed schedule.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Let's do it.
So March 15th.
Ides of March.
The Ides of March.
I didn't have Julius Caesar being assassanated down on the because it's not really a sports event, but
yeah, I mean there were a lot of participants.
Indeed. Why don't you go ahead and read through what we got?
Yeah, 1912. Cy Young retires from baseball with 511 wins.
That's one of those sports records that will absolutely never be touched.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the way pitching's going, where it's like 6-7 innings in a cloud of dust,
Yeah. We might struggle to have another 300-game winner at this stage.
Yeah, I don't know.
The way the baseball's played.
Yeah, I wonder who is closest right now. Anyway, 62, Wilt Chamberlain first to score 4,000 points in an NBA season.
Okay.
1988, the year of my birth, St. Louis Cardinals, the NFL's St. Louis Cardinals, officially moved to Phoenix.
Yeah.
That's wild to think about. There were 2 St. Louis Cardinals for a time.
Yeah. Yep.
2015, just a few 6 years ago.
7.
Is it 7 years? Oh, gosh, it's not
It's
2022.
2022.
Oh, gosh, I'm still not used to that. Number 6, Wisconsin beat Michigan State 80-69 in overtime to win the Big Ten tournament, holding the Spartans scoreless in overtime.
Yeah.
What do you like?
I would probably lean towards Cy Young.
That's kind of the way I was going as well. 511 wins is a lot of wins.
Yeah. And you're like I said, that is it's safe to say that record will never be broken. It's hard to envision baseball changing back to something where a pitcher pitches that many games that, now with guys pitching on 5 days rests.
Some teams are going to a 6-man rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tampa Bay Rays are having openers Have you seen this? Instead of
No.
closers, they have their best pitcher go first, like their closer go first, and you deal with the 3 or 4 best hitters, and then you put in your starter.
So just for like one inning.
Just for an inning or two, yeah.
That's weird.
And that way, because usually those top 3 or 4 guys, if they get through the order a third time, they figure out a pitcher.
Right.
And so that resets the clock a little bit on when they see the starter.
Okay. That's interesting.
It's called an opener.
Okay. So, but then do those same teams have closers then as well?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So you have an opener and then your starter.
Starter, your continuer.
Continuer, yeah.
Your sustainer, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. All right. You want to go Cy Young?
Yeah, let's do Cy Young.
Okay, let's do that. One thing you liked?
Last week in Atlanta, I mean, there were a lot of things I could have chosen, but I chose probably the weirdest one for your enjoyment. I had a delicious salted caramel vegan donut next to a Buddhist temple called Revelations Donuts.
Okay, so many questions.
Yeah. Let me rattle that off one more time.
Yeah.
Place called Revelations Donuts next to a Buddhist temple, and I had a salted caramel vegan donut. Where do you want to start? And it was delightful. It was very, very good.
Okay, let's start with the let's start with the concept of a vegan donut.
Mm-hmm.
I was not aware that meat was in.
So vegan is any animal byproduct. So eggs, no eggs.
No eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So.
And I chose salted caramel. It happened to be vegan.
I see. So this was not an intentional choice to go vegan on your part. It was just that sounds the best in terms of salted caramel.
Yeah, I think about 90% of them were vegan. So, if you didn't want to go vegan, your options were limited.
Okay. And this place was called Revelations?
Revelations Donuts.
Plural.
Yeah.
So this is not a mom and pop Christian little donut shop trying to throw shade at the local Buddhist temple.
No. In fact, the Buddhist nun I was interacting with goes, "Oh my goodness, those donuts are delicious."
Okay.
And their coffee is very good, is what she also said.
Okay. So
more questions?
But it wasn't associated with the Buddhist temple either.
It was not. They just happened to be next door to each other.
I see.
The Buddhist temple was really just a storefront. It was not ornate. It was not. I mean, there were a couple of Buddhist idols in there, Buddhas, but there was no like.
So do you think this is some like shell company? There's some nefarious money laundering going on behind the front of a donut store? Is that what you're saying?
No. I mean, it's in a strip mall. It's
Okay.
not. I'm just saying it's not a. Don't think of it as like a palace or like a big gold temple
Sure.
with a dome or anything. It's just a storefront with a donut shop next door.
Okay. All right.
And the donut shop was delicious. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely delicious. Salted caramel vegan donut from Revelations Donuts next to a Buddhist temple in Atlanta, Georgia.
Did you have coffee there?
I did. It was very good.
That was good coffee. Okay. Because you mentioned off air that your coffee experience in Atlanta was a little disappointing overall.
Overall, yeah, there were no. That was probably the only local shop I went to. Everywhere else, it was couldn't get a good cup. Although I did go to Refuge Coffee, which is a coffee shop in Atlanta. It was very good coffee. It was probably the best cup I had there, and I should have had that. Oh my goodness! It was a Refuge Coffee run by refugees entirely.
Oh,
it was pretty cool.
okay. Gotcha. Well, my one thing is far less exotic, but I might argue more historically substantial.
Sure, that's fine.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. My wife and I celebrated our 26th wedding anniversary this past week. So grateful for 26 years of marriage with her. And I think it is fair to say she is our biggest pod fan.
Yeah. If I don't get the episode up right at 1 o'clock, I
get the
usually
text.
I get a text or something comes through you from her. So yes.
Yes, indeed. So there you go. Well, it's good to be back in the studio with you, John. Last week's episode we recorded early, so it's been a little while.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
It has. We have talked sports in terms of baseball's back. the evil emperor Tom Brady is back. NCAA tournament brackets are up. Please make sure you check the show notes and join our bracket challenge. Again, if you win, we will send you a signed copy of one of my books. And maybe you'll talk me into the dissertation. Who knows? I'll crack the door. I might have a few copies laying around somewhere.
Wow. I don't even have a copy of the dissertation.
There you go. We talked Andy Stanley and how problematic that sermon was about knowing Jesus apart from the Bible, essentially. And we talked Cy Young setting a record that will never be broken in baseball. And we talked about a salted caramel vegan donut.
Yep. From a donut shop called
Revelations.
Next to
a Buddhist temple.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I think we got it.
In Atlanta, Georgia.
I think if any episode embodies the various and sundry ethos, it's this. So are you ready to call mission accomplished?
I think so.
All right. All that's left to say is until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.